What's up, guys? Welcome to Wasted Space, and we're back in Space Engineers with the third episode of the Planetary Survival series. And what we're going to look at today is kind of establishing our foothold, because what we have right now, we've got a vehicle, we've got our lander down, but none of this is kind of self-sustaining, and we don't really have any way of recharging our lander at the moment. So that is step one, the most important thing we're going to do next. So I'm going to head over here, and the idea is we're going to go and stick some solar panels on this to start recharging our batteries, because these are slowly running out of power. So at the moment we've got a selection of stuff on us. It's a good idea to just get rid of all of this at this point, because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of grinding, but maybe leave a few steel plates to enable us to build little ramps. And the first thing we're going to do is get rid of some of the extraneous stuff that's still left from last time. So number one is we got this timer block up here, completely useless to us now. We could potentially think about using it to toggle solar panels or manage our power a bit for us, but for the time being, not something we're really going to worry about. The other thing we can think about getting rid of is this sliding door, because as you can see, it's full of juicy components. So as we're not in an atmosphere with as we're in an environment with an atmosphere, I should say, we are not going to need to worry about keeping that, so we can go upstairs. The other thing we're going to remove, and this will make a little bit more sense a bit later down the line, is that sort of ramp there. So let's go up this side, and we are going to stick down a ramp to help us access the roof. So if not a wheel, we need one of these. Place that there, and this is going to initially let us grind down the window that's on the ceiling. We can now reach that. Lots of bulletproof glass and girders and so on. And we can build a second one of these. These don't even need welding up. You can save yourself steel plates by not bothering. All we need these for is to access the roof up here. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to put one final one in that position there. And this means that we can get right up onto the top, which is fine, but now we need to go and get ourselves some materials to build our solar panels. So back down to the bottom. The reason we've got rid of that ramp, you can now see, is to stop you from accidentally going up that way, because you'll just get stuck. There's nowhere over there to go anymore. But this way we can go back down to the bottom and grab, let's have a look. Materials wise, we're going to need solar cells, computers, steel plates, tubes, and construction components. So we got construction components, we got computers, we got steel plates, this stuff here. None of that's needed. We might need the motors potentially. Let's get the last of the construction components, and then let's fill us up with as many remaining solar cells as we can. We've forgotten the steel tubes as well, so maybe dump a few of those solar cells out, get some steel tubes, and then fill up the remaining capacity with the solar cells. And what we're going to want to do is try and align these solar panels to basically where the sun rises and sets. Now, it seems like dawn is the important one, but you can see with my world, kind of, we've got east and west are this sort of direction. So it's worked quite nicely for how my lander is landed. I just need to line these things up, if I get the rotation right, like this. Now what I want to do is try and have them overhanging the edge, which means they're going to need to be a certain way round. So here you can see that's not going to overhang the edge as it is, but that way round it will, although I think what I'll do is I'll do it this way round, other way up. So we've got room. Basically the idea is this is going to give us room to fit 4. But if we put this on this side, you'll notice it's the wrong way round, so they're going to have to be different ways up, unfortunately. But that's 2 to begin with, and we're going to start off with these 2, get these welded up, and then see what materials we're missing. I'm not going to skip this welding simply because it's so short, there's no point. I've got the materials on me, it's not the end of the world. So both of these need doing, and then we're going to perhaps, if we've got the remaining materials, and I know we have materials remaining for 1 more at the moment, and then we run out of construction components, we are going to put 1 more in the center section here, and eventually we're going to be able to fit 4 up on this roof, and they'll all be nicely aligned to get full power once they're built. So this one can go right up the top. Make sure this one's the right way around to leave yourself that gap. And now we can fall off the back. If you do happen to fall off the back, you can walk around the side here relatively safely. Just make sure you hug the engines and then come down, and we can get back up again. But yeah, if you do fall off, it's not the end of the world. You can recover. We don't quite have enough solar cells on us to finish this off, but I'm not going to worry about that. I will do the last little bit of that off camera, and we will go down and just set up the rest of our craft to not use any more power than we need. Now what we do have here is we've got an air vent and an oxygen tank that technically we don't need here. The air vent I will get rid of because we definitely don't need that. The oxygen tank, for now we can hang on to it. You never know, it might come in handy later, and it is at the moment full of oxygen, so hold on to that for the time being. We can get rid of the rest of the parts we're carrying, and now we can go and have a look at our power. Now there are a couple of bits we left on last time. So in this case it was the interior lights, wherever they are. Turn those off. We have a couple of other options when it comes to our oxygen tank is on. Our air vent was on, but we've got rid of that, obviously. And I think that's about it. That's the only other things we can turn off. Now, what we do want to now do is, if you have a look at the batteries, you can see these are still going to be discharging, which is not what we want. That's constantly using up our power. And if we go down to the solar panels, you can see these aren't currently powering anything really. 540 watts. They're not really doing anything. So if we go in here, select all the batteries, toggle semi-auto on and off, and then turn them all to recharge, we won't have quite enough power to charge them up. You can see we're now actually using those solar cells. So these solar panels are outputting their maximum. And if we go over to, we need to turn our lights on now because obviously we've turned off the interior lights. But if we go over here now, you can see we're still capable of getting energy back out of our med base. So this, for the time being, is fully functional. The thing to keep in mind is, at the moment, you can just see the sun over there, and I believe the sun is setting. I haven't been on the world for a day yet, so I believe that sun set rather than sunrise. But at some point soon, those solar panels are no longer going to be as efficient. In fact, you can see the one on the right-hand end is down to 3 dots already. So we're going to need to think about coming back. But next mission for us is nothing to do with that ship. We've got it recharging a little bit now. That's going to give us a bit of extra power now that's all set up. Imagine I've gone back and welded that last solar panel. By the time I finish this little bit of time-lapse, it will be welded. But what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into our craft and we're going to go for a bit of an explore. So I'm going to switch over to time-lapse for this. But basically the idea is we've got all these ore patches around us. You can see, well, that's 3 there. There's probably, I can see another one on top of the hill off in the background over there. But we have no idea what's in them and where all the ore is. We've got an ore detector on this. So step 1, we're going to go on a little journey and we're going to mark where all the ore is. So there's a number of reasons why we do this exploration trip first, rather than just kicking off mining the iron that's right next to the base, for example. And that's because on planets, unlike on asteroids, the ore is much more spread out, and it's much more confined to single types. So I have a couple of patches here that have iron, nickel and cobalt together, but it's pretty common to find big patches that only have a few veins in them, and most of those veins are the same material. And even where, like I have here, where you've got 3 different types of material and different types of ore in the same place, when you mine down, you're only going to get one of them at a time. You'll have a little nickel hole, you'll have an iron hole, you'll have a cobalt hole, but they won't really all come from the same hole. And it means that if you want to be able to build specific components, so say we're short on construction components, which we are, we know where we can go to get the ore we need to create those. Especially early game, this is going to be reasonably important. We're not going to have to faff around and try and work out and scout out where we need to get the silicon from, for example. Now, I was remiss and forgot to mention one thing before we set off from base, and that is that in my world, it's quite bright. At the moment, I've got 3 bars of solar power. It's looking pretty good. By the time I come back from the mining trip, they're still going to be running. For you, they might not be. So you need to make a judgment call, have a look, and then go and find the battery you have with the most power in it and set that one to semi-auto. They should all be charging, but that one on semi-auto will sit there and wait until you run out of power. And then as soon as you do, it will turn on and mean that you've always got a med bay there just in case you mess up and die while you're out mining. So we're back from our reconnaissance mission, and I now have a lovely selection of GPS beacons telling me where all the ore is in the local area, how deep down it is, so we can really pick what we're going to go and get and how efficiently we can get at it. So we now know, like, this iron, for example, is going to be a lot easier to get at than this iron. That's much, much deeper down. And we also know that we've got a bit of uranium kicking around, and we've got silver and gold, which are kind of handy resources to have. They're not that close, they're a few thousand meters away, but close enough that we can make use of them somewhere down the line. So at the moment, we're going to focus on this iron, cobalt and nickel that's actually just up the mountainside over there. So still about 2,000 meters away, but reasonably close, and more importantly, very close to the surface, which is going to make things easier for us to begin with, make the mining easier, but also, because it's on a slope, it's on a hill, it's actually quite a lot easier to mine it in general. You can come in at an angle rather than having to mine straight down. So that's another reason why I've picked that location. The other thing that's changed is the solar panel up there has mysteriously welded itself back up again as it should have been, and obviously we've now got to do a little bit of change to this lander to make it efficient for the purposes of mining, because if we come around here and have a look at these small cargo containers, you can see they actually have pretty pathetic space in them. They're going to be useful for perhaps carrying some components to repair our craft while we're out, or, and another good option for these is to carry some of the hydrogen bottles you've got in the lander, so that you've always got an option to use your jetpack if it's really needed. When you're mining, sometimes you can end up in a hole you can't get out of easily. But because of that, these things, we don't have enough cargo space in there really for what we want to do. So I'm just going to jump up on top, and I've already gone and got the materials for this. So in our inventory, we have the correct bits and bobs we need to build a medium cargo container. And what we're going to do is just get up here, we're going to crouch down and take out space for it in the center, so that when we're using this thing, it's going to be, you know, nice and center as far as our mass is concerned, because as we fill this up with ore, it's going to get really heavy. So having it hanging off the back, for example, is a really bad idea. It will completely throw the balance of the vehicle off. So now we've made space for it, it's still not actually going to go in that hole because our self-righting mechanism is kind of in the way. But we can fix that as well. If we just jump into the seat, which fortunately you can just reach from there, check the landing gear is unlocked, which it should be because the parking brake's on. And we can go down to the rotor, and we just want to change this rotor displacement down to about -10. You can see in the background here, it's actually moving towards us as we do that. And that's going to give us the clearance we need to put that medium cargo container down without interfering with the function of this arm itself. So that will still work just fine there. But we can now, as you can see, fit this cargo container in the gap. And we're going to fit it with the big hole pointing upwards, and that's so later down the line we can go and put a connector on top. So you can imagine that's going to go on top there, and we're going to be able to eventually hook this up to our lander with another connector and be able to unload everything automatically. And then slowly we're going to run sort of a bigger cargo system down the center of this vessel underneath. But for the time being, one medium cargo container is plenty, so let's just get that welded up. And you can see if we open this up now, 33,750 litres, much more realistic values than the 1,250 we get out of the small cargo container. So that's us pretty much set for our first mining expedition. So we're going to go up to that site up there, and that's because we need a bit of iron and nickel. They are the two things you need to make the bits we're missing at the moment. We have lots of all sorts of different parts, but the things we don't have are construction components and motors, and they're pretty important parts. They're used in a lot of stuff. So iron and nickel, nice and close to the surface up there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up there and do some time-lapse mining to close out the video. I'm going to try and fill up the cargo container that's in front of us. The few things I will say about mining as we sort of close things out is, remember, you want to be able to get back out of the hole that you've dug. Now, the hydrogen, if you take some bottles with you, is going to help with that. But try to keep in mind that digging sort of a slight gradient to your hole rather than straight down is always a good idea. Another thing to remember is, as you load up the vehicle with more and more ore, you're probably going to need to turn the strength on the suspension up. As it gets heavy, it's going to start sagging down, probably hit the ground. So you're always going to need to adjust suspension settings depending on how heavy the vehicle is. Fortunately, it shouldn't make too much difference with this one, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. And then the final part is energy. Obviously, this passenger seat that's on here, for whatever reason, passenger seats can restore your energy for you. So if at any point you start running low on energy, do keep an eye on that. Get back into the passenger seat, that will fill everything right back up for you, and at the same time, don't forget to take your helmet off. This goes the whole way through, don't forget to take your helmet off, so that you can at least breathe this nice oxygenated atmosphere we've got around us. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, hope you enjoyed that one. If you did like it, then obviously please hit like, please hit subscribe, it does help me in the channel out. And if you didn't like it, let me know down in the comments how I can improve, how can I make this series better for you. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, I will catch you next time.